these characters are on a ship, and I wanted a certain hostage situation to take place where one of them is a little bit freaked out. He's worried about basically the ship's computer system overseeing things with too much power, being sort of totalitarian. He doesn't trust it. He takes a prisoner. I wanted him to take a hostage, and certain things to unfold in such a way that certain through the course of this hostage situation, certain parts of the ship were destroyed or whatever, resulting in less supplies or a malfunctioning computer system or a death. So certain things like this, and then I realized like, wait. But with how I have the system right now, with how I have the ship right now, the computer system would be so powerful that this hostage situation could never transpire how I designed it, and things like that. Like that would be an example I could go into. But do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a lot.
Without spoiling
It's
anything you
been a
don't want to
while
spoil.
since I was doing a lot of outlining because I've moved on past that stage for the most part. So I don't remember a lot in detail, but I mean, I remember some things I had to figure out. A lot of things I had to figure out as far as the pacing of the novel because for instance, I had one scene where it was like some of the characters were imprisoned and awaiting trial, and there's supposed to be an escape, and initially it was during this escape that I had written in the a reveal for the identity of one of the characters who was always kind of a mystery to the main character.
Okay.
And that was my plan for a long time when I was outlining the book. It's like, okay, this escape's gonna happen, and why I was so attached to this reveal happening now was because it was one of the very first scenes I envisioned. Was like, oh yeah, like I can have there's gonna be this escape, and they're gonna be discovered, and they're going to be fleeing from the guards, and they're going to be forced to like go through the room where I'm not going to say specifically so I won't spoil anything, but they're going to go through a room where there's a character who knows the identity of this mysterious character, and they're going to call them out, and that's going to be like the first time that both my POV character and my audience knows and like figures out who this mysterious
traveling
character
with.
is. Yeah, who the mysterious guy is that my protagonist has been traveling with for quite a while. And it's plus a lot more emotionally charged if you knew who all the characters were,
Right.
but I don't want to spoil anything.
Right.
And yeah, I had this scene in my mind from almost from the beginning of like, yes, like this is gonna be such a good scene. And I was so attached to it that it took me quite a while of going through my outline multiple times before I realized this is a terrible place for this reveal to happen. Like this takes place maybe 30% of the way through the book, and I should not have the reveal take place 30%. Like this, the reveal is supposed to be kind of a climactic thing at the end of the book,
Right.
at least like maybe the end of the second act. And like, what am I doing having it here? Like that will mess up so much of the suspense that is the whole point of the book. And but of course, you're attached to it, so you're like, no, like I don't want to let it go. I like that scene, and like, but really, the story, the cohesion of the story is more important than like one cool scene you thought of.
And so painful.
Yeah, and like you will always think of another good scene. Like I rewrote it. I moved that so that it happens at the end of the second act, and the escape still happens. It just the reveal doesn't happen in the escape. The reveal happens later now, and it's way better for the story overall.
Okay.
And that's what outlining can do for you. If I hadn't outlined anything,
exactly.
I probably would have just jumped in and started writing it, and I would have written the reveal happening with the escape, and then like I would have finished the book and looked back and be like this whole thing is messed up because I did that.
And now, like you still have to work through so much. You still have to think so much. You still have to research. You still have to calculate travel dates and times and logistics. But it's all during this very streamlined bullet point process. And then once you actually get into the tedious, time-consuming job of the actual prose, the actual manuscript, you hope that you have a very, very, very small fraction of stuff you're going to need to realize and
Yeah.
yourself.
I mean, you hope. And I think
Yeah.
what you discover a lot as you actually get into the writing is like you start to see how things are actually going to flesh out, and you will realize a lot of things that you need to change, you know, you will realize, but you're going to be a lot farther along the process of writing a coherent novel than you would be if you just like jumped into writing chapter 1 when you had a cool idea and you don't know anything else about the story.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So do you, from there, how do you do it? Do you aim for generally a scene by scene outline? Earlier you said you want each scene to have purpose and be moving the story forward. That's definitely something I've come to embrace. I want every scene. I struggle with being over detailed, over tedious sometimes. So I've definitely come to focus on every single scene. I want it to have a purpose. Every bit of dialogue. You know, maybe there can be some lines that are just to characterize and are just naturally what would have been said in that moment. But generally, every conversation needs to have a purpose. So would you say you go for that, or is it a little more scaled back? Like, is it more like every chapter, or you have like the story blows, they need to go here, they need to meet this person, they need to...
Yeah.
But not every scene? How would you say?
Yeah, I'd say I don't do every scene in detail.
Okay.
And, you know, I'm not necessarily saying this is the best way to do it. I'm still trying to find what is the best way for me to write.
Yeah.
But, you know, I have my long outline that is just everything, like, you know, the plot plus the story plus you know what the characters are thinking, their motives, everything, like, you know, 150-page document of all of this. And then
that's just one continuous document. You don't divide it up. You don't have like
yeah, I mean at that point I just have one continuous document. Then I take like the first, you know, 25% of that, copy and paste it onto a separate document, and then I look at it more in detail, you know, narrow my focus onto that and be like, okay, you know, this is the first like quarter of my book. And from there, I usually will, you know, I'll read the first few pages of my outline, you know, be like, okay, yeah, this is what I was thinking for the beginning. These are all the emotions I need to capture. And then on a separate document, I will usually, you know, paraphrase the longer outline that I did into like, this is what actually needs to happen, you know? So in this chapter, you know, kind of chapter by chapter, in this chapter, I need to, you know, talk about, you know, this thing from their past, because that's important. I need to develop their relationship with their father. I need to drop a few details about this to foreshadow, you know, something for later. I need the character to go here, and, you know, I'll kind of do what needs to happen blow by blow. I don't necessarily outline like first this scene, conversation with character B, then this scene, going to the marketplace, then this scene, like, you know, encountering whatever. I don't really do that. Sometimes I do in my head, kind of, trying to figure out, you know, what the best way to do it is.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like it would definitely be helpful to be very intentional, because, you know, even with what I just described of kind of writing down like, okay, this is what needs to happen in this chapter, blow by blow. Sometimes I still get distracted. Like even today when I was writing, I wrote, you know, a kind of a character coming home to an like ambivalent reception by his family scene. And then I, you know, I knew what else I needed to convey in that chapter, but I didn't know exactly how to convey it. And I found myself writing a scene that, you know, half a page into it, I reflected, you know, I don't, like, why am I writing this scene? I don't have necessarily a plan for this scene. I don't know if this scene has any use. Like, I don't know if there's anything contributory to the story that I can put in this scene. And I just stopped writing right there, because I'm like, wait, like, what am I doing? You know, I kind of just got sidetracked, kind of was, you know, distracted in my mind, didn't know where to go. So I kind of went in this one direction, and I don't think it's good, you know? So tomorrow when I start writing again, I'm just going to delete all of that and go in a more intentional direction.
Yeah.
So, you know, sometimes I feel like, you know, it's helpful to do scene by scene. It's helpful to think it through. It can just be difficult in moments to know exactly. Sometimes
Yeah,
it's
it can.
easier when you look back at
Yeah,
something that you've written to be like, now I see what I need to do.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, okay. That's fairly similar to what I do. I think,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously similar to you, I grew up with a much more I don't need to outline, just because I was younger. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have an actual strong vision for my story. I was
Mm-hmm.
more taken up by like the cool moments I would envision, or the cool
Mm-hmm.
characters. And I knew I did have general ideas, like, okay, ultimately they're going to travel around here. He's going to go to this training, he's gonna train, and then he's gonna get stuck in the desert, and that's gonna be cool because they're gonna find this. So I did have like this loose thing,
Yeah, yeah.
but it was very much just what I had been struck with in various moments of inspiration, and nothing else. So then when I
Uh-huh.
was actually writing, it'd just be like, okay, they need to get over there somehow. Well, they're traveling here now, so
Yeah.
they'll probably have some hard times in the cold, and then
Yeah.
and so anyway, similar to you, I'm or I don't know how similar, but I've definitely shifted to now experiment with I would say the other extreme, which is I'm very much intensely focused on
Uh-huh.
outlining. Like I said, I've pretty much wanted every scene, every conversation to have a purpose and a momentum.
Mm-hmm.
My actual outline is fairly scene by scene, not absolutely, but I'll do similar to what you said, where actually I just started doing this recently. I started out with the outline, did tons of research. I would try to make it as concise as possible, what did I say, like bullet point list or flow chart or something. It was just
Mm-hmm.
like event, event, event,
Mm-hmm.
event. But of course, I want to make notes on, like, he has to experience this, he has to develop this. This is where we
Yeah.
drop a hint about. So it always
Yeah,
becomes
because you
very,
need to explain to
yeah,
yourself, because
yeah,
otherwise, by the time you're done writing a 150-page outline,
yeah.
if you go back to page 15, like you're not
You
going to
have no,
remember,
yeah,
like
yeah.
why what was I thinking specifically about the character's motives in this
Exactly,
moment?
exactly. So I started linking. So you start linking other documents, and
Yeah,
okay, I'll make a page for each character. Okay,
yeah,
I'll make a page for each relationship, and it becomes this huge,
yeah.
great but complex, bloated could be the negative word, depending thing. And so similar to you, perhaps I end up, when I go back, when I try to take a step back and do the scene by scene outline with a vision for the overall story, I end up doing similar to what you said, each section or each chapter or scene or whatever. Okay. And I have like needs to happen, and then I'll do the list,
Mm-hmm.
and then it'll be like, um, I forget what I have, but like other notes, like, okay, when this needs to happen, it's because of this. When this needs to happen, it's because of this.
Mm-hmm.
When this needs, so
Yeah,
those are potential foreshadowings that you can put in, and then questions or uncertainties. So I'll have like these three things. It's like needs to happen, questions and doubts, and then after that, if I feel like I want more specifics, I'll go into the actual scene, like, and conversations. But that could be enough
mm-hmm.
for that chapter or that
Mm-hmm.
section. Is just what needs to happen, my thoughts, my doubts. So that might be similar to kind of what you do.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, maybe you do it a little more detailed.
Probably.
I've been very strongly considering doing it a bit more detailed, just because I really want to avoid the weakness of rambling at all,
Mm-hmm.
including any extraneous scenes that are, or even making a scene longer than it needs to be.
Yeah.
Sometimes I look back on chapters I've written, I'm like, wow, like, you know, that chapter is kind of long because maybe
Yeah.
I conveyed something in very present time that maybe could have been summarized,
Yeah.
and with the same effectiveness, and keep the story moving a little faster, because maybe I didn't need to say, the details about the weather and whatever,
Yeah.
even if I said it in a really interesting way and a really applicable way. Maybe they didn't even need to stop in that town. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe I this 2 weeks of travel could be told in one paragraph. um and that's kind of the intentionality you can get when you outline and you realize, like, this is the only thing I'm trying to say in this
Right.
chapter. Like, don't say anything else.
Right. And it can be amazing how, we always say, just the reader doesn't notice what's not there.
Yeah.
The reader just, that's the story, that's what's before them, so they love it. If you come out the far end of a book and you're like, I felt like this so strongly with Kaladin and Shallan and Oathbringer. It was so irritating to me. I'm glad she chose Adeline in the end of Rhythm of War. I think, her journey has been good. That's one of the reasons I actually liked Rhythm of War more than Oathbringer. despite both just being kind of disappointing to me, was that, okay, Shallan reached some sort of, you know, she reached some sort of closure with this whole fragmented personality thing. She has matured. She's reached this kind of milestone with Adolin. She's ready to commit. These things I was happy for, but I just felt like, you know, coming out of Oathbringer and Rhythm of War, I guess, towards the beginning, you know, once they just became more isolated, I was just like, Shallan and Kaladin just have done nothing. Like, the pinnacle for me, the climax of their relationship was the very first meeting.
Yeah.
The very first, or not really meeting, but like spark conversation during the High Storm.
Yeah.
It's like, so you can look back at a book and you can feel like, okay, that character was flat. That character didn't resonate with me. But especially for probably writers like us who have such a focus on characters and the internal story, the internal workings, you know, internally motivated plots, and especially for and probably for readers in general. Readers in general, their characters are created by them, their worlds are created by them. They are almost always going to want to give probably more than the reader needs and than is necessary for the story. And I think, it's just important to keep in mind the reader never notices what's not there. He or she's going to read the story, enjoy boom, 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 being moved forwards to the next important event, and that's what they're going to remember as the story. They're not caring that you're leaving out, you know, the town, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm having trouble thinking of a good example, but I think we've probably said enough.
Yeah, I think we both understand. Let's see, should we kind of skipped past the second question that you mentioned at the beginning.
That's okay. I think we're probably in a pretty good flow here at talking about your outlining.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more we can say, definitely. I didn't want to forget if you wanted to go back to that.
That was how the cultures change with regards to prose and no, I think we're going good here, because unless you feel like you've already talked
no, I mean, there's more
outlining,
there's more we could say, definitely.
There's definitely more. I mean, is there anything further you'd want to say about your specific outlining process? What do you do once you go through that step of, you know, taking this section and condensing it? And oh, by the way, I think I remembered, I did have 3 sections when I started out. What needs to happen, and then this needs to happen, why, because of the internal character, blah, blah, blah. And then the doubts I had. And I realized they were kind of redundant. So I remember now I have just 2, just what needs to happen. And I explain everything, the whys and everything there. And then I have the doubts. And it can get a little long, but, you know.
Everything gets long eventually.
Everything gets long eventually.
Even like, I mean, I have
Crazy
so many.
You've just written the book in your outline.
I know, like, whenever I tell people, you know, sometimes people ask me, like, oh, you know, they know I'm writing a book. How's your book going? And I'll be like, oh, yeah, like, I finished outlining it, like, you know, 6 months ago. And, like, I outlined quite thoroughly, something like 800 pages. And they're like, wait, like, what? Like
wait,
if
so
the outline is 800 pages, then what's the book going to be? And I always try to explain, just like, you know, like, I have to explain it all to myself so that I don't forget it. You know, sometimes it takes longer in the outline than in the actual book for a scene, because maybe in the outline you have to write like all the nuances of, you know, this is what I'm thinking for, like, why she does this, and in the book all you do is write what she does, you know.
And it can be strange, but after consideration you realize it makes sense.
And so my outline's 800 pages. That doesn't mean the book's going to be 8,000, even though, you know, probably the rough draft will be too long. But let's see, what was I saying? I was saying, when people ask me, oh, you know, how's it going? And I talk about all that I've outlined, and it's a lot of motives, you know. You really have to think into the characters and the motives, and I always try to come up with, like we were saying, different documents to, like, okay, like, oh, I need to simplify this for myself. And, you know, I have multiple documents, like, okay, this is the skeleton outline, where, like, I try to, like, okay, simplify, like, one line, you know, like, boom, boom, boom. These are the main events of the book. And, you know, even those documents, eventually, like, I'm adding in subtext or, like, parentheses of, like, maybe this
Yeah.
like depends on what I think about like blah blah blah,
Okay,
and
right.
like
Yeah,
then
me
I'll be
too.
like,
Totally.
oh, like no, this isn't working. I need a new method of like, okay, you know, let's try, trying
A
to
different
simplify it.
document for this dilemma
Yeah,
alone.
exactly. Because, sometimes obviously the long verbose explaining everything is fully necessary, but sometimes if you need to wrap your mind
Mm.
around certain, like the pacing of
You
the
need to be
story,
able to
maybe,
see it all.
yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
need to
yeah.
just look at one
Totally.
page and see, these are the main events.
Totally.
And so, yeah, I mean, I have all sorts of different documents. I have color coded, like within my main document, I have, okay, blue means, it's a possibility, but I'm going to put, 3 paragraphs and I'm going to have to only choose one, they're just options. Blue means option. Green means, my latest editions. Purple means my latest editions. Pink is going to be, I'm going to put pink for any time I foreshadow this. I'm going to put, red for any questions I still have. I'm going to put,
Yeah.
and so the whole document turns into this very dynamic,
Yeah.
rainbow of different meanings that only I know. And it's, if I leave the document for too long and, go on a road trip for a couple months, then by the time I come back, I'm like, oh, like,
Yeah.
what does purple mean? Because I don't remember.
Yeah. Do you have a specific program you use or a specific software that you found?
I just work in
More-
Pages,
Okay.
on my laptop.
Just word processing.
Word processing. Probably there's a better one, but
Mm.
at this point, it's like I have hundreds of pages of outlining organized on there,
Okay.
and it works fine for me. But I know you use Wiki.
Wiki, yeah.
Yeah.
Wiki. I guess Wiki's probably the.
Boom! I hope you like this excerpt from the Jesse Tate podcast. Click through to see the rest of this episode or go to the channel to see more content like this. Thanks.